All right, let's dive in. We're going deep into the heart of scientific revolution today.
Sounds intense.
It is. We're tackling a massive question, one that's been debated forever, really. Is science like the ultimate truth? Or just our way of trying to make sense of all the chaos?
Yeah, that's a big one. Where are we even starting with that?
You sent over some amazing stuff, excerpts from Lavoisier, Faraday, even some Fourier analysis in there.
Oh, nice. A good mix.
And to make things even wilder, we're inviting some unexpected guests to this lab. Socrates, Joe Rogan,
Wait, really?
Kanye West, and Nietzsche.
Wow, okay, this is going to be interesting.
Definitely.
But-
But first, let's go back in time. Antoine Lavoisier, ever heard of him? The father of modern chemistry. He's our first stop.
Oh yeah, Lavoisier. He was revolutionary, literally changed how we think about chemistry.
Totally. What was so groundbreaking about him?
Well, his experiments were incredibly precise, like way ahead of his time. He measured everything so carefully. The massive substances before and after reactions, nobody was doing that before.
So what did he find out?
He figured out that when things burn, they combine with something in the air, which he named oxygen.
Oxygen. That's basic stuff now.
Exactly. But back then, people thought burning meant some substance called phlogiston was escaping.
Phlogiston. Never heard of it.
Right. Lavoisier proved that wrong. Shifted
No.
the whole focus of chemistry to measurements and analysis.
Wow, so he really did change everything. Makes you wonder, though, what truths we believe now might be totally wrong later.
Yeah, good point.
Like this whole oxygen thing, if Lavoisier hadn't named it, would it even be a discovery?
I think that's where Socrates would jump in.
Oh, for sure. He'd be all over that. Is this oxygen really new knowledge, or did Lavoisier just invent the concept?
Right. Air was always there, but Lavoisier gave it a new framework.
Mind-blowing. So is it a discovery or an invention? But let's move on before we get too deep into that. We've got Michael Faraday to talk about. Electricity, magnetism, all those invisible forces.
Faraday, he was amazing. A true visionary.
Total genius, right?
Mm.
But how do you even study something you can't see or touch?
Well, Faraday came up with this brilliant idea, these lines of force. They're like invisible pathways showing how magnetic and electric forces move. It's like he was trying to map an invisible world.
That's incredible. So did his experiments actually prove those lines were real?
He did all these clever experiments with magnets and wires, right?
Yeah.
And he found out that moving a magnet near a wire creates an electric current.
No way.
Yeah. So that connection between magnetism and electricity, it's real. His lines of force helped visualize it all.
Man, if Joe Rogan were here, he'd be losing his mind over this, talking about invisible forces connecting everything, like some giant web of energy.
Totally. He'd be all about bioelectricity and the Earth's magnetic field and all that.
Exactly. Maybe not down every rabbit hole Rogan goes down, but that passion he has for these mysteries, it's contagious.
True. It reminds us that science isn't just cold, hard facts. There's wonder in it, you know? Pushing those boundaries, always being open to the unknown. Like, there's so much out there we haven't even begun to understand.
Totally. And speaking of pushing boundaries, up next we've got Joseph Fourier. He wasn't messing with magnets and wires. He went straight for the hardcore math.
Fourier, yeah. Heat transfer, that was his thing.
And he did it all with these crazy equations.
Fourier series.
Not gonna lie, math's not my strong suit. Can you break down these Fourier series for us mere mortals?
Okay, imagine a complex sound, like a musical chord, right?
God.
A Fourier series is like taking that chord and separating it into all the individual notes. You can analyze all these complex patterns by breaking them into simpler parts.
So instead of just a jumble of noise, we can pick out each note in the chord.
Exactly. It's like that for heat flow, light waves, all sorts of things. It helps us understand the patterns hidden in the universe.
That's wild. Okay, so where does Kanye West fit into all of this? You know, he'd be calling himself the Lavoisier of culture right now, revolutionizing music and fashion, just like Lavoisier did with chemistry.
Kanye's definitely all about challenging the status quo. And yeah, there are some parallels. Both science and art are about pushing boundaries.
True. Experimenting, creating something totally new.
Right. Questioning everything and having a vision for something different.
Love it. I wonder what Nietzsche would have to say about all this. He was all about embracing the chaos, right?
I think you'd be impressed by all these scientific revolutionaries. They all defied the limits of their time, pushed human understanding further.
They all looked into the abyss and tried to make sense of it all, coming up with their own explanations for how the universe works.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It really makes you think all these scientists with different methods, different ideas, they were all searching for the same thing, right?
Truth. Yeah, how do we know what's actually real? That's the big question.
And each of them took a different path to get there.
Like Lavoisier, he was all about those measurements, right? Seeing it, weighing it, proving it.
Yeah,
That's how we found truth.
exactly. And that was radical back then. Before him, chemistry was basically philosophy, lots of guessing. He brought in the hardcore science.
Made it real. But even with all that precision, we still get stuck on that crazy question. Did he actually discover oxygen? Or just invent the concept?
Yeah, it's like how much of what we know is just us imposing our own ideas on the world, even in science?
Whoa, deep. But maybe that's where Faraday comes in with his lines of force. He couldn't see them, right? It was all in his head.
Exactly. Imagination. You need that in science too, not just data. Faraday had to visualize those lines to make sense of what he was seeing.
He was like a bridge builder, connecting the stuff we can see to this invisible world.
And that's how science moves forward, right? Sometimes you got to go beyond what you can directly observe. You got to imagine new possibilities.
Joe Rogan would be all over this. Imagination unlocking the secrets of the universe, connecting to hidden dimensions.
I'd probably say Faraday's lines were like proof of some cosmic energy field connecting everything.
Maybe not. But it does open up some wild possibilities, right? If invisible forces like that can do so much, what else is out there that we haven't even thought of?
Scientists are still working on that, always coming up with new tools to see deeper, uncover new layers of reality, stuff we couldn't even imagine before.
It blows my mind to think what Faraday would say about our world now. Wireless communication, smartphones. It all started with his discoveries.
Right. He'd be amazed. But knowing him, he'd still be pushing further, digging deeper into the mysteries. True scientists never stop being curious.
So true. Okay, enough about invisible stuff for a second. Let's talk about Fourier. This guy was a math whiz, trying to decode the universe with equations.
Fourier series, they still make my head spin a little.
Mine too. But what was he even trying to do with all that math?
Think of it like this. He was looking for patterns, for order, even in chaos. He realized that even something super complex, like how heat flows, can be broken down into simpler pieces.
Like that music analogy, right? Separating the notes in a chord.
Yeah, so instead of just random data, you see this beautiful hidden structure. He gave us a language to understand it.
Like a Rosetta Stone for the universe. Okay, now I know Kanye would jump in here, saying he's doing the same thing, but with music and fashion.
Kanye's all about remixing, taking what's there and making something new, a new kind of order from the chaos of culture.
So there's a science to his art, a way of finding hidden patterns and making something new.
Definitely. It shows you how science and art, they're not so different after all. Both need observation, experimentation, thinking outside the box.
And both are trying to make something meaningful out of the world we live in.
Totally. Nietzsche would love that. Pushing boundaries, challenging everything we think we know, he'd be all about it. These scientists, they were all fighting against the easy answers, the complacency. They wanted to understand the world on a deeper level.
They stared into the void and didn't back down.
And in doing that, they showed us the way. The search for truth is never easy. It takes courage, imagination, and a whole lot of hard work.
Wow, what a journey. From Lavoisier's meticulous lab to Faraday's invisible forces, we've covered some serious ground.
And even tackled some pretty heavy math with Fourier.
My brain's still buzzing. But I think it's all starting to come together, you know? How these scientists change science itself, but also ask those huge questions about what we can even know about the universe.
It's like they were all searching for truth, but each in their own unique way.
Lavoisier, he was all about those hard facts, the proof you could hold in your hand. That's how he revolutionized chemistry.
He took it from philosophy to real science.
But even with all his accuracy, we still hit that philosophical wall, right? Did he discover oxygen or just invent the idea of it?
Trippy, right? Shows how even in science, our own perceptions shape what we know.
And then Faraday comes along, diving headfirst into the invisible world with those lines of force.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even study something you can't see?
You got to use your imagination. That's part of science too. Faraday had to visualize it to understand it.
He was a pioneer, connecting the visible to the invisible.
And that's how science grows. You got to think outside the box, beyond what you can directly observe.
Just imagine what Joe Rogan would say. Imagination as the key to the universe, tapping into hidden dimensions.
Probably connecting it to some cosmic energy field, yeah.
Maybe. But it's true. Faraday opened up a whole new way of thinking. If those unseen forces are so powerful, who knows what else is out there waiting to be discovered?
Right. And scientists today are still following that path, inventing new tools to see things we never even dreamed of before.
It blows my mind to think what Faraday would make of our world today.
Oh,
Wireless tech, smartphones, all built on his work.
he'd be amazed. But I bet he'd still be pushing further, always more to learn. That's the mark of a true scientist, always curious.
Absolutely. Okay, let's bring Fourier back in for a sec. This guy, he took it to a whole other level, decoding the universe with math.
Those Fourier series are something else.
Definitely complex. But what was he really trying to do with all that math?
He was finding patterns, even in the chaos, showing us that even super complicated stuff can be broken down into smaller, simpler parts.
Like that music analogy we talked about, separating the notes in a chord.
Exactly. It's like finding the hidden structure, the underlying order. And his math gives us a way to understand it.
Or Rosetta Stone for the universe. Kanye would be all about this. He'd say he's doing the same thing with his music and fashion.
Kanye's a master of remixing, taking what exists and making something totally new, creating order out of chaos.
So there's a real science to his art, a way of seeing patterns and making something fresh and exciting.
Totally. It makes you realize that science and art, they're not so different after all. Both need observation, experimentation, a willingness to break the rules.
And both are trying to make something meaningful, something beautiful out of the world around us.
Right? And Nietzsche would be cheering them on every step of the way, pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo. That's what it's all about.
So, after all this, where do we stand on that big question we started with? Is science the ultimate truth? Or just our way of making sense of things?
I don't think there's an easy answer.
It feels more like science is a journey, a process of always learning and growing.
It's about asking questions, challenging what we think we know, and coming up with new ways of seeing the world.
It's about embracing both the hard facts and the power of imagination, using everything we have to understand the universe and our place in it.
And even if we never find the ultimate truth, the search itself is what matters.
It's the journey that counts. The more we discover, the more we realize how much there still is to learn.
It's humbling, but also super inspiring.
And I think all our guests today, Socrates, Rogan, Kanye, Nietzsche, they'd all agree. That thirst for knowledge, that's what makes us human.
They were all about pushing the limits, asking the tough questions. They showed us what's possible when we dare to explore the unknown.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling a sense of awe, the power of human curiosity. It's incredible.
And I hope you, our listener, are feeling inspired too, to keep exploring, keep questioning, and never lose that spark of wonder.
Because that's what it's all about. The journey of discovery, the constant questioning, the never-ending search for understanding.
Who knows what amazing things we'll uncover next?
Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring.